Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. Here with, as always, Mr. Joe Oberly, but from the sounds of it, this might be your last show. You got one in the grave.
Not quite that bad. No.
Well, damn it. Outside of that, how you doing, man?
Good. Just the usual. Hanging in there. It's exciting stuff. But
yeah,
just writing for Purple PTSD and Vikings Territory, and doing my best to do my part.
Waiting for camp to start. I'm so jazzed for camp this year. Speaking of being jazzed for camp, talk about a professional segue. We have a special guest in Mr. Kirby O'Connor, who has been the guest host when Joe was on vacation. But if I recall correctly, you guys have never been on a show together.
I think we were once.
Were you?
I think so. Weren't we, Kirby?
I don't think so, but maybe.
You're just surreptitiously trying to steal my gig. That's it. You never.
I didn't know how to tell you that, so I just wanted to spring it on you for the views, man.
That's
for
what
the
it
gram.
is. I think what happened was when I was on, we recorded the longest episode ever, and so Joe O made the joke that I was stealing his spot.
That's right. And now that I'm packing up a lung, now that I'm suffering from seasonal allergies to a near fatal degree, Kirby's perched like a vulture, just waiting to pounce.
I wanted to thank our listeners because 2 weeks ago we had our biggest show ever, and then last week we had our biggest show ever again, and it was twice the size of the show before it. It looks like, I don't know if we're getting promoted on iHeartRadio or something, but we had a ton of clicks there, or downloads or listens or whatever. And so when you have a juggernaut of a show, you always have to have a plan B. Except for me, I'm irreplaceable. Joe is the editor of our network, and Kirby is the managing editor of Purple PTSD. He's the Sean Borman of Purple PTSD. How are you doing, man? How's life out on the West Coast?
Life is good. Life is busy and tiring with a child.
Yeah,
so,
how's your little baby doing?
He is just great. Yeah, if I'm being honest, every day is just a wonderful experience with him. He's getting real strong, so yeah, it's been amazing. I understand why people talk about parenting the way they do and say it's the greatest thing they've ever done.
Hardest job you'll ever love.
Well, I bought birds recently, so I have that going for me.
Seriously,
I can relate.
It's amazing that it is. It's the greatest gig ever, but it is a grind. Oh my goodness, it can be a grind, and sleep deprivation is a terrible thing. It messes with your mind, but then the kid just smiles and coos, and it's all good.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I gotta get my family going one of these years. But you guys are my family, right? That's my way of asking if I can move in with you, Joe.
Joe, you're like that uncle that just shows up at family events and no one's sure why he's there.
And I'm half in the bag. Dangerous presence. Illegal fireworks.
Drunk uncle.
That's one of my favorite skits on SNL. Let's get into the news of this week. It was a relatively slow week, hence my excitement for camp. But there were a few things of note. One of the bigger stories being Brian Robison retiring. And to start with that conversation, I wanted to kick it to you, Joe, as someone with the press pass and who I assume has interacted with him once or twice. Or a bunch. Maybe what your favorite story of him might be, and also just thoughts on him retiring. He seems like a really open guy when it comes to the media. I know he calls into KFan every Monday, win or loss, which is pretty cool. and he's he kind of has flown under the radar as a Viking, coming in with playing opposite guys like Jared Allen, Everson Griffin, and then a lot of people kind of saying chomping at the bit rather to have Danielle Hunter replace him. But I think it was 2 seasons ago even he kind of had a renaissance and was extremely valuable to the defense. So I think he's a relatively underrated player on this team, or had been anyway.
For a number of reasons. Yeah, you're certainly right. He's he's been there most of the time that I was there, and he's always been a favorite of mine. I wrote a story about it on PTSD the other day about saying so long to him and
on Vikings territory too.
Yes, and he was always available to the media. I mean, always, no matter win, lose, or draw, all week long. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of the players go and hide when they, especially for a loss, and even when they're winning, they don't want to talk to us. And he was always there. He would the cameras would come on, he'd turn around, face him, and do it. And to be honest, he made a little bit of a career out of it. He had his 96 questions where he would walk around the locker room and talk to all the players and ask them goofy questions, and he's kind of forged a career afterwards. You're starting to talking about fishing and different things, so you never know when he's very articulate and a great guy. And I do have one story that longer time readers of these sites would know is was back. I don't know if you remember when I think he got on camera in a game against the Packers for kicking T.J. Lang in an inappropriate spot.
Yeah,
he was laying on the ground and kicked him in, and it got caught on camera. And he after the game, I mean, he got a lot of grief for that for a long time. That week in the locker room, we were all talking to him about it. It was a whole scrum crowded around him, and I was relatively new, and certainly new to Twitter and my understanding of it. And Brian was talking about how he got back to the locker room after the game and had 500 messages on his phone that was blowing up and stuff on Twitter. And so I, before I could even just stop myself from saying, I said, "So you were trending," and everybody, just broke up laughing, and he turns to me with this just withering glare, and everybody's laughing. So he could have just unloaded on me. Instead, he smiled. He goes, "Yes, I guess I am." And so it was for me, it was a moment of kind of acceptance around there, and it was could have gone the other way. And so I was always grateful to him for that. And I've talked to him many times, and everybody has, because he's that available. He's that good a guy. And like you said, never the big stud on the team, but in so many ways so great for the defensive line. And in his later years, as Zimmer, started moving him around, his value increased when it was on the decline. So it was nice to have that little renaissance. And then the whole idea that he was training in Danielle Hunter to play in his position, take over for him is just shows you what kind of a team guy he is and a great guy he was. So I was really happy that they brought him back for the one-day contract and let him retire and have that press conference. That was nice.
And that's not a given in the NFL, training your replacement. I know that's a famous Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers thing, and now you have the same thing going on with Flacco in Denver, saying it's not his job to groom his successor. So it just seems like he's a really good guy, and he'll be missed for sure.
You wonder if they'll show up somewhere else, either in some format with the team, because I know Zimmer really liked him and used him as a leader in the locker room, and for a long time he was Brian was helpful in getting Everson Griffin to figure out how to be a professional in this league, they played alongside each other, but still, Brian was kind of a mentor to him, and that's the kind of guy that Zimmer really prizes in the locker room.
Do you think, from a coaching perspective?
Well, I don't know. They asked him that in the press conference, and he says, "No, maybe not right now. I know he's got this YouTube series that he's got on talking about fishing, because he's a big time fisherman, either whether he's down south or up here in Minnesota. And so I think he's going to do some of that, and he likes being in front of the camera. So that may be one way in, but you never know. I mean, there may be a capacity for him sooner or later to step in and be a coach. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Kirby, what are your thoughts on his retirement?
I think it was such a great move. After we released him before last season, I wasn't entirely surprised by the move, but it still kind of hurts to think about. You losing a guy who's been there for so long, for pretty much not the whole time that I've been a football fan, but for a significant amount of time, because that's right around when he started was when I really started paying attention to the Vikings, which I guess kind of dates myself as pretty young. But
nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, he just I don't know. He was always a guy that was there to me, like Joe kind of said, he never was like the number one, but he was always like the solid number two as far as defensive ends go. But just it was so cool to see, and just to like hear his emotion. He did the video of his retirement on like his fishing boat, and towards the end of it, he starts tearing up when talking about his teammates and the fans and everything, and it kind of showed not only what he meant to not only what he meant to the team, but what the team meant to him and the fans meant to him. And I think just having that kind of work ethic and everything on the team for so long, because Robison was a 4th round pick and he ended up tied for 5th overall in sacks on the team all time. Mm-hmm. And actually it was just, I don't know. I definitely teared up when I was watching the video of him on his fishing boat.
It was a testament to him to have so many of his teammates show up for that final press conference, and I think that really moved Brian. He addressed him a couple times, and I think he kind of, when he was giving that press conference, he was basically looking at them the whole time, and he was kind of telling them, his words of wisdom on how to take this forward and where you go from here, and it was neat to see. It was neat to see. He took the year off. It didn't take the year off. He got released and he tried to catch on with somebody else. Knew it didn't happen. Wanted to play a little bit more, but so I'm sure it was tough for him to give it all up. But I think he had in that year time to spend with his family, which Kirby can certainly understand and see how important that is to him. So I think he's happy in his retirement now, and it was really nice to see.
Definitely. And that raised a question, kind of a side question, a tangent on Joe. You were talking about perhaps having a post-playing career in coaching. Obviously, that's kind of what happened with Terrence Newman, and then he stepped down, and a lot of people thought he might be coming back to train some of these younger guys, even though he could do that as a coach. I don't recall hearing if they ever really said why he did that.
Who?
Newman. Why he stepped down from being a coach.
That's a good question. No, there was nothing that ever came out that I recall. They just said he was stepping away, and maybe it wasn't for him. Maybe he needed that time away from the game to get some perspective, because you go from traveling with the team all those years, and that's a grind, and then as a coach it even is more so, because you're probably spending more hours on the game than you were as a player.
Yeah.
And
especially under Zimmer.
Right, and so maybe he found it was not what he wants to do, but it's too bad, because I'm sure he has some value to those young players.
Yeah, I was on his retirement press conference call, and it was the first press conference call I had ever done, and I hadn't really seen a lot of Terrence Newman's interactions with the media before that, and it seemed relatively contentious because a lot of the questions seemed kind of insulting. I mean, he took them that way, definitely. A lot of like, what's it like to be the... Oh no, this wasn't after he retired. This was after he signed the 1-year contract. And they were saying, what's it like to be the oldest guy in the NFL now? A lot of old questions. How's your body holding up? And he's like, I'm not dead, like... I don't think about being the oldest player. There's nothing to do with that. It means nothing. I just focus on what I have to do. But they asked him what he was going to do after he retired, if he was going to coach, and he literally just said, I I have to figure that out because I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life after this. I haven't thought
I'm
about
not
it.
dead yet. I'm feeling much better.
So I think I'm just very badly burned. I just watched Austin Powers for the first time in like 10 years. But yeah, it seemed like he didn't really have a good idea on what he was going to do post-career. Maybe he's figuring that out. The other news that seems to never go away lately is the Kyle Rudolph, will he, won't they, trade, extend, so on and so forth. The news that came out yesterday was that the team was working on a 5-year extension. I've read that the extension would make him either the highest paid or one of the highest paid tight ends based on new money average. Which I don't even really know what that means. I think it would be he would get less money in 2019 and then more after that, perhaps more guaranteed. There's been a lot about him not taking a pay cut, so on and so forth. And so at this point, I'll kick it to you, Kirby, for the first response. Do you think he'll be on the team? And do you want him to be? Or would you be really upset if he left, or how would you feel about that?
I want him on the team for sure, especially with the pick of Irv Smith Jr. I want him on the team in like a long-term capacity to form Irv Smith into like the professional tight end that we want him to be. Because that's kind of one of the things that happens is tight ends take a couple of years usually to adjust to the NFL and become the starting caliber player. So I want him here for sure. But I also understand that if they can't get anything done, they can't sign him for longer than past this year. It might make a lot of business sense to try to trade him and see what you can get for him. But all of this like talk around it feels kind of like we're just making it up at this point. Because
what? We never do that.
Because
not on this show.
Because I know there's guys out there who have a lot of sources, and they have like insider information, but it seems like everybody is just speculating on it at this point, and they say 5-year extension, and people were laying out plans for what that would look like, and there's a cut at year 2, we could get rid of him after that, whatever. But I think the fact of the matter is we've seen it for so long, the speculation that we're going to burn ourselves out at this point, because I don't think anything happens until very close to training camp, if anything at all. So I guess my final answer is I think he's here this year, and I think he does get extended for the next couple of years. I think he's just too valuable to the culture of this team and the identity of the Vikings in the community, as the Walter Payton Man of the Year with all of his amazing, charity work and everything. I don't see how he's not in purple this season and for the foreseeable future.
He's definitely one of the biggest faces of the team, and this is the first off-season for you as a writer, because I think you joined in the sites in December, and so it's going to get even wackier here in a little bit.
I think this. Can I chime in on this?
No. Next topic. Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Go ahead.
I was spending a little bit of time thinking about it recently because I'm finding it fascinating. I first of all, knowing Kyle, the kind of person he is, that we all know as, I'm surprised it's not done. You think he's one of those guys that, total team guy, team leader, nice guy, cares about other people, wants a team to win, blah, 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 and he's going to be, okay, let's go get this, redone and figured out, and let's move on.
I was actually going to, since Kirby was relatively thorough, I was going to rephrase the question to you exactly that way. Why do you think he's being a stickler in regards to the contract? And really quickly, I'll just put my 2 cents on it. I'm going to do another Periscope video with Ian at 1 o'clock today if people want to ask us questions. But it's specifically about Rudolph, and I have two frames of mind about it. One being, as just a general human, I don't like the NFL's contracts, and I understand why he might not want to do a backloaded contract because he's seen, AP's $18 million final year, and they're never going to pay that money, and I think he understands that. But from a fan perspective, I selfishly want to keep him, and I don't care what it takes at this point, really. The yin and yang of it. But yeah, as somebody that has interacted with him, like you said, and I completely stepped on your take, but why do you think that is? And it's surprising, as you said.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out because I think it's a guy who's at the point of his career. I forgot to look up. How old is he? Is he like 30 or 29?
29, going to be 30.
Yes, and he's seeing the end of his career coming at some point. He's known what his career is like, and he's probably working on his last contract. And he's gotten to this point on this one. He's got $7.6 million coming to him this year, and he probably feels he deserves it because his performance has been increasing after those first 4 years of injury. He's not missed a game since then, or done most of it in the last how many years, and he doesn't want. He knows what happens, like you just described, Joe. They'll stretch out his contract, and they won't pay the last ones, and he knows so him and his agent know that's kind of, it's capaholics or capology. That's what they have to do in order to make all this put together. Well, they also know that the Vikings are strapped for cash. They need it, and so does every other team. They tried to trade him. At least the reports say so. So he knows that they're not finding out there what they think his value is. I mean, they'd love to get at least a third rounder for him, but nobody's going to give him that because they know that they're going to have to make a decision on him. And the scary thing about it is he's got a zero dead cap hit if they cut him. So the other teams are just happy to wait it out. And I looked up for perspective. I looked up Gronk's numbers last year. He was 11.6 million. And now Kyle is not Gronk, but he's one of the better tight ends in the NFL production wise. He's not a great blocker. Blah blah blah. You can say all the things. He doesn't break tackles. For all that, but he's probably saying, I'm about to get the most money I'm going to get. It's going to start going down from here, so I'm going to get as much as I can. I've got leverage. They can't get anybody for me. What are they going to do? So I think you really see what's going on here, and that's why they can't come to an agreement. It's not necessarily Kyle being a jerk. It's Kyle maybe seeing the writing on the wall. He sees they draft a new tight end right underneath him. They've drafted tight ends like the last 3 years, I believe, and so he knows that his future or his end is coming. So he certainly doesn't want to give up this highest point in his career as far as his contract is concerned without something in return. And I think the Vikings are trying to find a way to get the most out of it, to get the most space. I mean, they're going to have to sign. As every season, we know people get hurt, so the Vikings need some cap room to go into the season, to sign new players when all these other guys go down. So they are in a tough position, and Kyle's got leverage, and nobody's offering a deal. I mean, I think it's fascinating what's going on here, but I want the guy back. I think to have Kevin Gendron, I don't know how you say his name, on our site,
Gendron.
Wow.
Wrote that story about Kyle and pointed it out very well. To have him and Smith next to each other is a whole new different matchup that the other teams have. So I want him here, and for many reasons, including what you talked about, the kind of guy he is. But this is where the Vikings and their capologists are. This is where they make their money. They're trying to fit this in, but they don't have a lot of leverage right now, and Kyle does. So I don't blame him and his agent for doing what
and if they were, I mean, I know they weren't going to know what was going to happen, that if Irv Smith Jr. was going to be available or another tight end in the second round or after that. But it would have seemed to be more beneficial to trade him perhaps before free agency, or when there was still a decent amount of free agents out
Right.
there,
Right.
or before
Yeah.
the draft to convert that pick this year as opposed to next year, because clearly, as we've all kind of just alluded to, this is the most all-in I've ever seen the Vikings ever in my lifetime. I mean, they have all the pieces, they have very little money, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the impact on the field, I did a Periscope on Tuesday because we typically record Morning Joes on Tuesday and we couldn't. So I wanted people to know that we were going to be doing it today, and just to kind of rant about Rudolph. And the more that I've learned about Kubiak and his the results he's had as either a coach or offensive coordinator, and I mean, if you look up the records of the teams and the offensive rankings of those teams the year before he showed up in Houston or Denver or anywhere, it's night and day, and it's really encouraging. But he's a big 2 tight end set guy. I think, obviously the difference between 11 and 12 personnel is big, and the league seems to be going one way, and if the Vikings keep Rudolph, they would be going the other way.
Which is good.
Yes, I agree. And I think that one of the big things about Kubiak that makes a ton of sense on this team by itself is that he likes to have players that can accomplish multiple things or fill multiple roles, hybrid wide receiver running backs or tight end / wide receivers. And I think that in all the debates people are having about the wide receiver 3 position and Eldrick Robinson being gone and Jordan Taylor's going to be that guy, you could really have Irv Smith Jr. as your de facto wide receiver 3, just in terms of the amount of touches that he would end up getting. He's more of a receiver than Rudolph is, in regards to his skill set. And so I know a lot of people are freaking out about wide receiver 3, but in terms of just output,
right,
Irv Smith Jr. could take that role.
Two tight ends out there that can catch the ball is pretty exciting. I mean, Isn't that what the Patriots have done with Gronk? They've always had, did they have one of the Bennett brothers out there for, I think it was Martellus, I can't remember, for a while. They've always had another decent tight end, and to give Brady places to go, I think dang well that they're chomping at the bit, but they're smart enough. They're going to wait and see what the Vikings do. Kyle, they're not going to say, okay, here's the 2nd round pick, we'll take him, even though they could really use him. But they're going to say, they probably offered a 7th round pick for him, and it's just not, it's just not enough. So I think what's going on here is really fascinating. I'm kind of interested in how Rudolph and his agent are playing it, and I say more power to him, but I want him on the team. So
I covered the Eldrick Robinson signing with the Panthers thing yesterday, and I put a highlight of Irv Smith Jr. In reference to the point I just made. And how he's different from Kyle Rudolph. And if people can click on that and watch that highlight, he basically gets a dump-off pass at the Alabama 30 and runs around 4 guys for 70 yards and a touchdown. You never see Kyle Rudolph doing that, but at the same time, he's not as good as Rudolph is contested catches or difficult
in the red zone.
Yeah, that was Irv Smith's biggest knock as a prospect, was that he doesn't have the long arms or the jumping or the height to separate himself in jump ball situations. So the red zone, is an issue for him, but he definitely has the ability to run after catch way better than Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, it was. I was really surprised, and I'm glad that the microphone didn't turn on when I tried to boo that pick at the party.
And Zimmer wants him, just for what you guys have just talked about. The 2 styles, the 2 different abilities. They want Rudolph for the red zone, and they want Smith for his ability. I have to think they took him because they have to look towards the future. They knew Rudolph's contract was coming up. They knew changes might be in the offing. They maybe thought, we can save a lot of money here. We can still get a good player. We got to start grooming some. And what they had already on the roster wasn't there. So that's why they drafted Irv Smith. So Kyle's smart enough to realize his value, to see what's coming, to see what's going on, and I'm, Kirby may be right. It may not happen until training camp, and I think that would give me an ulcer. But I would like to see it done before then. But like I say, I'm still we're seeing it play out right in front of us, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and in the news, we don't need to really get too deep into this of Aldrick Robinson signing with the Panthers. Isn't a big surprise. Although he was in a pretty gloomy season, he was one of the few bright spots. And when it comes to the wide receiver 3 position, you have to wonder, and we talked about this last week, so we don't really need to talk about it too much. But if they're going to look to replace him with a speedster, or if they're going to look for a possession guy, or maybe a bigger guy like Jordan Taylor, who's like 6'5" or 6'6". Since we talked about that last week, Kirby, I wanted your feeling on that. If you don't necessarily want to name who you think will end up with the gig, you don't have to. But what type of receiver they might be looking for, or types, since they don't just have 3 spots.
I think they're definitely going to be looking for a guy who can separate a little bit, but definitely, we kind of seen
Jeff Badette.
Jeff Badette is one of the guys that is on my radar as up there for that position. But definitely, some of these young guys.
Wow.
Probably not, unless they get that extra roster spot for him being German.
They could cut Adam Thielen, right, Joe?
Oh my. Oh boy.
What a take.
Moving on.
That was my take. I'll just tell you really quickly, Kirby. That was my take back when we had signed. I was obsessed with Mobo, and I know it's a horrible take in retrospect, but if people go to mockdraftables.com and type in Moritz Boehringer, they've been tracking every player's combine results since 1999, so unfortunately they don't have Randy Moss's stuff. But I went through the top wide receiver prospects and averaged out per drill who had the best. Number 2 was Megatron, and number 1 was Boehringer. I mean, he's just like in the 90th percentile for everything.
If they type in his name, they'll see a picture of Mobo with a Joe behind him smiling.
Hey, we're friends on Twitter. I did an interview with him. So at the time, I said that to make room, they should cut Thielen because he hadn't emerged yet, and he was doing more of a special team stuff. And I said we've seen his ceiling and compared to Mobo's. And so
I tried to walk you back from that. I tried.
The funny part is, who else was even on the roster as a receiver at that point? That
Charles Johnson, maybe.
Ooh.
Yep, Charles Johnson was. So was Diggs.
Jarius Wright, maybe.
Yep, Jarius Wright, exactly. That's probably the crew. And Joe kept saying Mobo. I said no.
I loved Mobo.
No. I mean, when you told me that he was going to Adam Thielen was going to get cut in place with my head to put my foot down. It's just.
Unfortunately, that wasn't one of the episodes where the plug-in fell out of the outlet, so I couldn't take that back. But anyway, sorry, Kirby. Continue. Unless I broke your brain.
No, it's all good. But I think what I was going to say was I think the wide receiver 3 is actually going to be not a set spot this season. I think it's going to be done definitely by committee and who has the hot hand and who's kind of matching up well against the defenses. I think we're going to end up seeing. I think we're going to end up seeing a rotation of maybe Jeff Badette, but probably Jordan Taylor. Assuming Jordan Taylor makes it through camp, I think Taylor is probably my top candidate actually of the kind of veterans there to get cut just because we saw it last year with Kendall Wright. They brought him in.
I was just going to say I can see that happening too, just coming after 2 surgeries and how competitive that position is going to be. If he starts slow or maybe can't even do full speed or contact drills, he could fall behind and not come back.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think Treadwell's definitely going to be in the mix. As much as people want him gone, he's going to be there and be in the mix. If nothing else, for his blocking. When they want to run out of 11 personnel.
His dead cap space is his entire contract, so almost $3.2 million. So
no, it's not. It's not dead though. That's his. I'm looking at Jordan Taylor.
No, I'm talking about Treadwell.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Taylor has 0 dead cap space, which could make him a casualty. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Treadwell, you save like $400,000. It's something real small that isn't going to make enough of a difference to justify cutting him. But yeah, I think it's going to be Treadwell, Badette. We might see Chad Beebe. I think I would be incredibly surprised if Beebe doesn't get a ton of playing time, even though I'm down on him. And I think the last guy that I'm going to mention is I think Dylan Mitchell is the kind of, that's the one that I want to see step up and make those plays, just because I've watched so many highlight films of him and some of his film from Oregon, and he catches the ball and he makes things happen, and in very much a way that is reminiscent of not to the level, but like reminiscent of like a Percy Harvin, where they get the ball and they make things happen.
Yeah.
That yak ability and the ability to kind of, he's not going to go down right at the point of that he catches the ball. So I think Dylan Mitchell is my kind of dark horse pick to take over the position.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like you mentioned, Jeff Badette, Chad Beebe, and then Laquan Treadwell, the other ones that are going to be, I think, on the roster by the end of camp.
Yeah, I've from what I've heard of Dylan Mitchell, and I saw a couple Oregon fans at the liquor store, and I talked to them. They said he's probably the most pro-ready of the later round receivers, and he'll break off his route and kind of bail quarterbacks out if they need him to. He's got really good instincts, and he helps his quarterback out by perhaps sitting down as opposed to finishing like the quote that summed up the entire season last year on the sidelines of, "'Cause I don't have 10 seconds." He'll find a way to get open quickly if he needs to bail his quarterback out, and I think that's going to be really important.
I think that
early in the season, especially.
I think that I would agree with that. If he has those talents and they draft him, they're going to give him a shot. If he can step in and do something right away. I mean, Zimmer's not a guy that's known for putting a lot of rookies into his lineup when he has known commodities that can do it for him. But in this case, he really doesn't. I think Treadwell is done. I don't know that they'll cut him, but I know we all know that he'll play out his contract and then he'll be gone, or unless they find someone like Dylan Mitchell who just steps up and says, okay, we got to have this guy playing here, and Treadwell will be buried on the roster. So it's another fascinating position battle that they're going to have to see what they're going to do. When you look at last year, Aldrick Robinson, you're not having to replace a lot of receptions, but it could be so much better to have someone who's a threat in there to take pressure off of wide receivers 1 and 2. So it's a really important position. Yeah, important position for him this year, and the more weapons you can throw out there, the better. I didn't know that about the way you just described him, Joe. Is exciting to me to have a guy already has those instincts and can help out your quarterback. My goodness, that's exactly what they could have used last year, at that position. But Treadwell couldn't do that. Treadwell could run the routes and drop the ball when it came to him. And it's funny how often, at least in camp and early on, that Cousins would go to him. Maybe because he always. I know. It's amazing.
Everyone thought he was going to have this huge breakout year because they were really and we you and I thought maybe they were giving him a ton of looks because they were going to see whether or not they were going to even keep him at that point.
Right. I think they were, and I think that they've already made their decision. If they can find somebody that can replace his production and then some, Treadwell will be either cut, traded, or just buried on the roster and playing out the string.
I'm sure he'll get an opportunity elsewhere because NFL coaches really love first-round picks and seeing if they're smarter than the guys that I can fix them. The other team didn't know what they're doing. But I've said this on the show a million times. But the best example of the third receiver spot is Jarius Wright, where they don't call on their number maybe even for a game or two, but when they do, it's usually in a pretty clutch situation. It's usually for a third down pickup. And if you can't catch the ball, that's just, you're not going to get that spot. And I'm sure it's rough riding the bench for, 8 quarters and then having to come through in the clutch, but that's what you get paid for.
And that's what Jarius Wright was great at. And you make a great point because, we were to the point of we were just celebrating a catch by Laquan Treadwell.
Yeah.
And it's like, think about that objectively. I mean, how sad is that when you had Jarius Wright, who was just Mr. Third Down, Mr. Clutch. His percentage was so high, and he was making tough catches and running after it. And if Treadwell would make a catch, we'd go, okay, good, yes, that's great, And it's like, that's terrible. He's a professional athlete. Come on.
It reminded me of Eby from the first pick the Timberwolves had after the Joe Smith stuff happened. And I was at a game where he finally got a dunk, and the entire stadium went crazy. And I was like, man, the bar is low for this guy. The other big news this week, and I'll preface this with a story, since I've been talking a lot about some of the negative reader feedback that we get. And I wrote an article about I know, the internet's people being mean. It must be a new thing. About the Kendricks restructure, Bradbury signing, and I wrote the entire article. I explained what happened, how the money was converted to signing bonus, but I said that he had taken a pay cut, and I didn't mean in general. I just meant in terms of his per game salary, his actual pay, not his bonus. And like I've said before, if you leave any nuance, people will form the most stupid conclusion. Not stupid in regards to them being stupid, but what they think we're doing. Like they take it the wrong way. So that's not what I meant for all the thousands of people that read that. But my thoughts on this is I really feel that these guys are, speaking of being all in, it's really heartening to see these guys, outside of Rudolph, I guess we just talked about, being willing to take a cut in overall pay when it comes to Everson Griffin, changing up his salary when it comes to Kendricks, and Barr coming back at the 24th hour. It just really feels like they are really buying what Zimmer and company are selling, which, Joe, as you know, that wasn't always the thought process of people that followed the team. A lot of people thought some of the players resented Zimmer's Joe Biden-esque mouth when it comes to the media. You had the whole Rhett Ellison's dad toxic leadership thing. And it's clear that these guys love playing with one another. They love being on the team, and they really think that they have a shot. And I can't remember a time, really, with a team that was as close as these guys appear to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a heck of a lot easier for a guy like Kendricks, who's in the middle of his contract, to just say, okay, I'll take more money now. I mean, it's no sweat off their nose, I don't think, to get more money, in a bonus where they can put it in their pocket today. And
I was wondering if tax-wise it's different.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably a whole different category.
And it probably is, because they get taxed in whichever state they're playing in that week, and so Minnesota's a high-tax state, so on average, I think he probably makes less money. So
that's probably why most of them live in Florida. So they don't, but anyway, so it's a different situation for Rudolph, where it's easier for someone like Kendrick to do it. So I'm glad someone like him stepped up. I'm glad, Barr gave him a hometown discount to stay. That's the kind of things you need. And unfortunately, for a team that's so strapped with the salary cap, they should be coming off a 12-4 season, but they're coming off an 8-7-1. So
we're like the Patriots used to be. I just realized, in regards to people taking pay cuts and wanting to be on the team. Look at that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can quite say that we're like the Patriots in every form or fashion.
No.
But maybe that one.
Really quickly too, I completely forgot to mention that Kirby hosts a relatively new podcast, Vikings on the Clock, that is really amazing and only partially embarrassing, apparently. That's an inside joke. I apologize for not mentioning that at the beginning of the show, man, because I really, really love that show. And if you're listening, you can find that on any of our sites. Do you record the same day every week?
No, we're all over the place, especially with my schedule and trying to have multiple hosts. But hopefully we can nail something down coming up here, especially when we transition into the the actual college football season. But right now we're kind of all over the place. So
you're going to be covering some college stuff too.
Yeah, that's going to be the main focus of the show after these next couple weeks, actually, because there's nothing to talk about draft wise, really, until you talk about college football again. So we can sit and speculate all we want about how players are going to work out, but I think that's boring to just continually rehash the same argument over and over again.
Well, then we're in trouble.
So I think it's good to look forward and look at college football. We'll talk about the Gophers and NDSU and.
Do you have a favorite team
in college football?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Minnesota Gophers, obviously.
Oof.
Yeah, hello, Joe.
That's not. I went to the U of M, and that's why I'm not big into college football. I needed an emotional attachment, and my sister played for the Gophers hockey. She also played for the boys team in high school, so we were on the front page of the Star Trib. I should find that and post a picture of it. So I used to be able to go into, I forget what the name of the building was. It's right kind of kitty corner from the McDonald's on 10th Street, and they had all these amazing displays, and they would show back in the leather helmet days how it was them in Michigan and all the championships they won, and then all of a sudden the 50s or 60s hit, and it just cobwebs. And then you look at what Michigan's been able to do, and it bothers me that we're not as good as Wisconsin even or Iowa on a consistent basis. Because we used to rule the world, man. So it drives me crazy. But everyone should check out that show. Bradbury signed. You weren't on the show after the draft, were you, Kirby?
No, this is my first time returning after the draft. The last show I was on was we were sad that Barr wasn't going to sign with the team again.
Wow. Then an hour later it all changed, which is so typical of this show.
And it's been a blur since then, right, Kirby? Because you've been taking care of your newborn.
Pretty much. I don't know what time is anymore. So.
Yes.
I was going to ask your opinion on Bradbury, but I actually, since we have about 10 minutes left, the topic. Actually, let me know. What were your thoughts on that pick?
I thought Bradbury was an amazing pick. I think
you weren't one of the guys who wanted us to, because some of the tackles fell, and I know there was a small contingent of people on our internal chat system Slack that were kind of rooting against that pick.
I wasn't one of the ones who was rooting against that pick. I was rooting for them to move back up into either the late first or the early second to get another offensive lineman. But I don't think I ever rooted against the Bradbury pick, just because I understood that the scheme fit was going to be perfect. And I did have the foresight to look forward and see that you're essentially fixing two positions with the Bradbury pick because.
We hope. Yep.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, we're fixing two positions.
Yep,
because
I agree with you, though.
I don't think you can get much worse.
Oh, certainly not. I don't think anybody can do a worse job than Tom Compton.
Yeah. I saw an article yesterday that had a dark horse rushing leader in the NFL from a site, a different. It was like an East Coast team site, and they said Dalvin Cook could be that guy.
So it is written, so it shall be done.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So speaking of wild speculation in the offseason, but I thought that was an interesting topic. Speaking of articles written, this isn't so much wild speculation, but Ian Paraguay, who was on the show last week, who will probably be on the show in a couple weeks, who's the host of Skull Sessions and is the optimistic Vikings fan on Twitter, wrote an article talking about what 3 different options for the Vikings at corner, or what they're going to do at the corner position after this season. Really quickly, I'll go through the 3 options and then ask you guys what your opinion is, what you think they're going to do. The number one was to extend McKenzie and let Trey Waynes go. Number 2 was to extend Waynes and McKenzie and trade or cut Rhodes. The third was to restructure Rhodes, sign Waynes, and let McKenzie go. And I just wanted to say really quickly, as a guy who's told the story a million times, so I won't do it, Trey Waynes was really the impetus or the catalyst for an argument that ended up creating purple PTSD in the first place. And I've always been a big fan of his. Here's my obligatory Big Ten reference, Joe.
He lasted longer than Mobo, so that's good. Anyway, go ahead.
And so I've always been a big fan of his, and a lot of people really didn't like him. They didn't think he could turn because apparently he's a Frankenstein or something. But I've seen a shift last season and then this offseason. I mean, the comments on that article, or just comments in general, where it would have been completely unbelievable before last year for people to talk about cutting Rhodes, or that Waynes is better than Rhodes, or keep Waynes over Rhodes, and that seems to be kind of the public perception or the general agreed upon stance right now, is that Waynes is more valuable than Rhodes. Rhodes is overpaid. He's perpetually injured or faux injured when he gets burned. He's the fourth highest paid corner in the league, I believe. He gets $14 million. So I find it interesting that people now love Waynes and hate Rhodes, and so, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Waynes guy. I think what he does in the run game, especially, I think he's probably the best run-stopping corner in the league. But I really don't know what to do at that position. You don't know what you have with Mike Hughes coming off that injury. He probably won't be healthy. You do have Holton Hill, but he's suspended for the first 4 games of the season. And so it'll be interesting. Joe, out of those 3 options, or maybe if you want to throw out a different option, what do you think is going to happen there? What do you think should happen?
Well, they didn't draft a high cornerback, so you're talking about after the season, though, aren't you?
Yes.
I look back to who's running the defense, and that's Mike Zimmer, and you know how he's the cornerback guy, and he's always said it takes his cornerbacks a few years to really figure out his system and figure out what he wants them to do. And he's put a lot of time in the 3 guys that you mentioned, McKenzie, Waynes, and even Xavier. And so I don't see him wanting to get rid of any of them.
Yeah.
Very readily. I mean, Alexander's now he finally figured it out, and is demonstrating the kind of things that they, in their mind, drafted him for. So I don't see them bailing on him for any reason. Waynes has gradually become the first-round caliber player that they drafted him for. I don't, if they, it's all about the money. If you can fit these guys in the cap, and Rhodes has shown that he is, he's 4th highest paid. Well, he's one of the top cover corners in the league.
Yeah,
and
he's only 1 year removed from being like a complete shutdown guy.
Right, and if you look at as you mentioned, the injuries, you look at how many games he's actually missed, and it's not very many. Zimmer has his nickname for him, which he won't tell us what it is, but we know that he probably calls him some kind of diva because he always goes out every game, with something bugging him, and then comes back in, and then by the time the next game comes up, he's back on the field.
And now, in his defense, sorry, but there has been a couple where he's gotten beat, and the replays look like really bad injuries.
Yes, absolutely.
So that there is some truth to that.
Yeah, but I don't think I really struggle with the whole tag of injury prone. A guy gets injured, stuff happens. Anybody can get injured, especially at those positions. People get injured all the time. I mean, look at the rookie from last year with Hughes. I mean, my goodness, having a great season, all of a sudden he tears his ACL on a very that play wasn't very non-contact play, if I recall correctly.
Was that at home?
I do believe it was, but I can't recall for sure. I want to say against Detroit or something. But anyway, so I think he's got who he likes in there. I don't think they drafted a cornerback late, didn't they? What's his name?
Yeah,
this year?
Chris Boyd.
Now I don't know if he's got a cornerback of the future. They see him that way, but it's going to take a while in Zimmer's system. He's more a depth guy in case Hughes comes back slowly. So I hope they don't get rid of any of them. I think Zimmer's trained him up to where he wants him, and he wants him around for that reason.
Have you seen Hughes recently?
Me?
Yeah, at TCU.
No, I saw him last. He came through last time I was out there during end of the season last year, but I haven't seen him since then. I've only been out once this spring, and I'll probably be going out this week for OTAs. So
you're so cool,
Kirby. What do you think about the cornerback?
I think it's going to be tough for sure, but I don't see them letting Rhodes go, just because he is so valuable when he's healthy, when he's on the top of his game. I don't see them letting him go, especially not for nothing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Rhodes is the kind of guy where he should warrant, if you want to move him, he should warrant a second or third round pick in my mind.
But his contract is a problem.
Yeah.
But I find it hard to believe that we're going to see Trey Waynes in purple after this season just because of the numbers. Like that's just it's the reality of the situation. Is I think he is going to get paid. He's going to get paid cornerback one money somewhere. He might get paid. If he has another very good season, he could be looking at getting paid close to the highest paid corner in the NFL, just because teams are so, they're always looking for the next guy, the next big, number one. We saw it with a guy like Josh Norman, who isn't anything more than a slot cornerback. He went and got paid just a ton of money for one good year.
14 mil, I think. He's number 2 behind Howard, the guy from the Dolphins.
Just crazy money for a guy who really had one good season, and isn't an outside cornerback. He's a slot corner in actuality. So I think Wayne's showing the ability to play on the outside and the ability to step up and be a cornerback one. He's going to get paid. He might be the highest paid cornerback in the NFL after going into next season, depending on how well he does this year.
Is this his last year under contract?
Yep.
Well, if they don't do something in the off season or in running up to training camp, you may be right, Kirby. That may be the writing on the wall that they realize they can't get something done. He wants to check out the free agent market because he is going to probably get some good pay.
I think they add like $10 million to the cap every year, so that might help. But yeah, currently, up until this upcoming season, last year he got $2.2 million. The year before that, 1.6. Then the year before that, 1, and then $400,000 the year before that. Now he's up to almost 9.1 mil. Yeah, but like you guys said, just the amount of time and coaching that they've invested in these guys, you'd have to think that they're gonna try to find a way. But as we've seen lately, there's a limit to what Brzezinski can do, even though he's probably the most valuable guy in the league at his position based on what he's been able to do. But I'd be really sad to see either of those guys go.
I don't know. You have to start over with somebody else then, and that's something a person always, that a team's always doing in the NFL. That's the way it is. They're starting over with Boyd for sure, and
I would rather keep Waynes than Rhodes, because I think Holton Hill, as an example, just because I don't have enough of a sample size with Mike Hughes, his game replicates Rhodes's more than it does Waynes. Waynes has that speed that is hard to match. He's also in the run game, like I said, the best run-stopping corner, something that is also hard to replace.
But Holton Hill is also a question mark. He's out 4 games this year, and he came in with off-field issues.
I know.
You don't get that in Xavier Rhodes. You don't get that in Trey Waynes. You get guys that you can count on for being there in one way or the other. So he's a roll of the dice a little bit, even though he has the talent.
That really sucks.
Well, that's part of the reason they brought in. I think part of the reason they drafted Chris Boyd is because Boyd is Holton Hill's best friend, I guess. And Boyd has been able to stay clean his entire college career, so maybe he's gonna pull him up and be like, hey, we're professionals now. You gotta stay clean. You gotta stay.
Do a Michael Floyd, Kyle Rudolph, and move into his house and keep a
great factor.
Keep him away from kombucha. What type of what kind of corner is he, Boyd?
He's actually not. Well, in my mind, he's not really a corner. He's a cornerback safety hybrid.
Okay.
just because he doesn't play man especially well outside of he can jam people at the line. But he's not going to be one-on-one on an island at all. I think he's going to be a zone guy, and I think actually a switch back to safety could make him way more valuable than anything.
They kind of drafted him in that in mind, didn't they? I mean, as far as defensive line or defensive backup, someone who can play more than one position back there, and with a leaning towards safety. I thought that's what it was, but I may be wrong there.
I think so. I think there's no way that they looked at him and they said, no, he's going to be a replacement for any of the cornerbacks we have on the roster right now. I think they knew he was going to be similar to like Anthony Harris, where he's going to play. Not that Harris has multiple positions, but what I'm saying is Anthony Harris was a guy who was undrafted. He but then formed into a good safety through the tutelage on the team. So I think Boyd is going to be that guy that they kind of mold into the next safety.
Do you know how big he is?
6'2", 6'3".
Wow, man, they really like having these long corners.
Maybe him. I might have 5'11". I had it mixed up with someone else.
With me. You guys have any articles coming up you want to plug? Or they should. I can do multiple things. Any upcoming articles, Mr. Oberly or Kirby, or episodes of VOTC?
Well, like I said, I'm going to go out to TCO on, I think, Wednesday. They've got the first OTA and see what's up out there, see what the players are willing to chat and what they've got going on, and maybe write something up from that.
Awesome.
We just did a show of VOTC, so that's up on Purple Territory Radio. I haven't gotten it up on PTSD or VT yet, just because I think we had like 3 or 4 articles go up in one day, or like 2 or 3, and I didn't want to
blow it up.
I didn't want to kind of fight with that. So that'll go up pretty soon here. And then the other thing that I'm pretty excited about is hopefully we'll be able to record it tomorrow with Ian. I'm going to be starting a series of videos for our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Detailing some of the position battles we're looking at heading into camp, and kind of speculating what's going to happen with the 53 man, and it'll be should be a good time. They'll be kind of quicker, less rambly, hopefully, videos than we.
You should never have me on then.
I'm hoping to keep them pretty slick and pretty right around the 10-minute mark. So they'll be pretty digestible and pretty easily shareable.
That's not how we do things around here, is it?
I know. I was like, man, I don't know how many topics we have, and then we were like 1.5 topics in, and it's already half an hour's gone by. To find us on YouTube, and the YouTube link will be in the articles for this episode. Look up, it's the Vikings Territory YouTube channel. We're actually in the process of building a physical studio to do more video stuff. We want to make sure that we're really bringing out a lot of video content, but also that content doesn't necessarily bury the written content, because they're all equally important. Beyond that, keep an eye out on our message board, because we are going to be really overhauling that and creating a lot of new features that I am beyond excited about. A year ago, I pitched a relatively comprehensive app, sort of a sports social media, or a Viking social media app, and it was supposedly cost $200,000. So I found a kind of a way to MacGyver that, and it's going to be really, really cool. It's going to be basically Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit mixed together. And I'll probably get sued by all 3, but I got to do it for the fans. But again, I wanted to thank everybody who has been listening, everyone who's new to the show. Joe and I are very, very proud of this show, and it just means a lot that people are positively responding to it, because we put a lot of work into it, and it's only going to get better as we get access to training camp. Joe has a press pass for the full season. It's going to be really cool. So thanks again for that. We should be back next Tuesday, maybe a little bit later, depending on what news does and doesn't break. But I will be doing a Periscope video with Ian Paraguay at 1 o'clock today, talking about a few different things, answering questions, so on and so forth. So if you can find it at Vikings Territory there or just on Twitter. But this has been Morning Joe's for Saturday, the 18th of May. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you all soon after I get out of jail for animal cruelty for smothering birds. Skol.